part of our build-up to the start of the World Cup in Brazil, we've been bringing you stories that showcase the wider significance of football across communities worldwide. Well, joining us on today's programme is Jane Carter, who is here to discuss her work as the director of the football charity Coaching for Hope, and its work that aims at helping to improve social integration and the futures of disadvantaged children in Africa. Jane, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Just tell us first of all a little bit of a background about the charity and how it started.
Okay, well, Coaching for Hope is a programme that uses the power of football and the amazing sort of influence it has worldwide to help some of the most deprived children across the world. And we started actually in Burkina Faso, which I think is the fourth or fifth poorest country in the world, in 2005, by coaching coaches. And I think our goal was to create more football coaches for young people to have access to the game, and also give them skills such as life skills, access to information about things like HIV and AIDS. So to build awareness through the game, through football itself, but not just football, it's kind of football plus.
Yeah, sure, we'll go on to talk about some of that more in a moment. But it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I've travelled to different parts of the world, and really that is one of the things that unites, particularly children. They're so into it, aren't they? And what have you found that they follow, particularly the European teams? Who are their favourites, who they like to see?
Well, I think it's, what I find amazing is you can go to the most remote village in Mali or South Africa and you'll still see somebody in either a Barcelona shirt or an Arsenal shirt with a player's name on the back, or even one they've written in by hand themselves. So obviously the reach of Premiership and Champions League football is amazingly broad. It seems to get to places where other sports and other media just don't get to. So I think that's part of its power. It's part of the attraction of using it as a vehicle for education or for social change or for a whole range of things, really. Now,
as you've already touched on, it's not just the actual sort of health benefits that they're getting from playing the football itself, but it's also sort of other skills and other information that you're teaching. Let's talk about the HIV education.
Yes, well, we started off with what we thought was basically a level 1 football coaching course, which we were teaching local African coaches to use. So obviously they would come to us saying, our passion is football, we'd like to coach, so we give them correct coaching skills that's based on the FA standards. And alongside that we introduced a curriculum which was about HIV/AIDS awareness, and we did that rather than do it in a kind of classroom setting, which can be a bit off-putting to young people, or it might seem a bit kind of expert and top-down. We do it out on the pitch. So we'd have an activity which is game-based. I mean, for example, how do you get the HIV virus? And for people who don't quite understand that, there's all kind of myths around it, how you contract the virus. So we constructed a game where the football players defend themselves against the virus in different very simple ways. And then at the end of that game, they would debrief it, discuss it, and the coach's role then is to sort of lead that discussion and to sort of deal with any issues that come up about, oh, you can get the virus from a mosquito, you can get the virus from a condom. There's all kinds of myths and taboos around it. So part of it is to actively learn and actively discuss and participate in understanding things like that, which can be quite life-saving and hopefully life-changing.
And one of the problems that worries all parents around the world, wherever they are, is the scourge of drugs and the worry that their children might get involved in that. How is this project helping prevent children get involved with that as well?
Well, we realised when we started a programme in South Africa, and we obviously were taking out to that programme our HIV/AIDS programme, there's already a lot of activity going on the ground in relation to HIV/AIDS awareness. And one of the things that came through to us from working in townships with youth was that one of the factors that led to a very high infection rate was substance misuse and the widespread use of drugs like TIC and the fact that they was available on the street, etc. So we produced a new curriculum which was called Tackling Substance Abuse Through Football, and that had a similar approach in that it took the basic facts about the substances that are most widely abused or used with glue, whether it's crack cocaine, whichever substance that's used on the streets, and informed people about that and about the effects on your mind and your body and the connection between your mind and your body. If you want to be an athlete or a sports person, how that damages your potential to perform on the pitch, etc. So we've used this very similar kind of active learning approach than we did to the HIV/AIDS, and I think that's been quite effective. And we've worked with ex-addicts, we've worked with homeless people who are very susceptible to being involved in either drug dealing or drug taking, and we've begun to see some quite encouraging results in that people are now becoming more conscious and aware of their own decisions and what they do to their bodies.
Working also with other marginalised groups, the disabled people and women. How's that been received? Because perhaps some societies don't necessarily think that those people should be involved with sport and football.
Well, it's been quite challenging. I mean, for example, our disability programme, which started in Mali, we trained 20 disabled coaches who had disabilities ranging from blindness to intellectual disabilities, mobility impaired. So there were a group of very different people who were all trained by some disability coaches from the UK into just how to include anybody in your football session. So the idea was to make it as inclusive as possible, and we produced a course called Adapt It, and the idea behind Adapt It is any game you play can be adapted for a blind child or someone in a wheelchair or whatever, just with very simple techniques. So now those 20 coaches are our first kind of like, you know, trailblazers. They're the ones who are out in the community acting as coaches. And the really interesting thing is that because they're now seen as coaches, they're no longer seen as just that disabled person in a wheelchair or that beggar on the street. So that was part of our intention, was just to try and change perceptions about disability and to say, you know, just because you're disabled doesn't mean you can't play sport or take part in an activity, whether it's football. Or we've invented a game where we got some blankets from Air France and created a game called Blanket Ball, where you hold blankets at the corner and then you throw the ball up in the air, and someone on the floor can do it, someone in a wheelchair can do it, someone standing up can do it, and it's quite simple, but it's quite fun. It's quite also involves coordination. So part of it is like building physical strength and physical confidence through sporting activity for disabled people, and then getting them to feel they're not this kind of helpless victim, and also I suppose for the wider society to see that they're not just helpless victims.
Sure. Working with girls as well, we've been seeing some footage of some of the football sessions you've run with girls. I mean, what would those girls be doing if they weren't doing this?
Well, I think the thing with girls we've had a really interesting project in South Africa, in Johannesburg, Durban and Cape Town, and we've worked with girls who've been kind of discouraged from taking part in sport, and many of them have been subject to domestic abuse, gender violence, in some cases rape, and have felt quite vulnerable. No, so going out in football kit is not really seen as the done thing. So again, we've started with the coach. We've created female coaches who are community leaders or role models or whatever, who then protect their teams and encourage girls to join their teams. So I think the positive thing is now the teams are really flourishing. There's a girls' league in Cape Town now where a whole group went to Turkey for an international tournament that was funded by Turkish Airlines. So it's given them this amazing kind of lift in their confidence and morale, and made them see that they can actually do things that are seen just as boys' pursuits. And I think it's given them confidence in other areas of their life as well, to sort of challenge things that happen to them in school. They're more likely to stay on at school. But one of the interesting outcomes from the research we've done is that girls who go through a regular sporting activity, whether it's football or basketball or netball or whatever, are more likely to stay on at school. And that's a very sort of important thing in a way, because it gives them more chances and opportunities and choices when they want to, you know, find a job or move on in life. They're not necessarily condemned to a life of poverty or domestic service or whatever the options might have been before.
Well, an important message to girls worldwide as well. I was listening to one of the interviews with one of the girls who's been involved in your soccer team, and she said, before I played soccer I dreamed of becoming a famous singer or dancer. Now I dream of becoming a pro soccer player. I mean, how important do you think it is to show girls around the world that they don't just need to sort of aspire to be attractive or sexy like so many of these role models in the world for girls at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's really important, because there's such an epidemic. I mean, in looking, you know, in Britain, epidemic of eating disorders and girls self-harming and feeling they can't live up to the images they see in the magazines or celebrity TV programs, etc. So I think to show girls out on the pitch enjoying themselves, you know, maybe sweating a bit, but no, actually scoring goals, celebrating as a team, being part of a team is also, I think, hugely kind of reinforcing and kind of lifts morale, lifts spirits, lifts confidence. And I think it's great for girls to have that option, to think it's perfectly okay to do that.
Talking about lifting morale and spirits, David Beckham is among those. Lucas Radaby, another famous footballer who supported your cause. How have the kids reacted to that? Because David actually went out to see something.
Yes, it was amazing. He came out to Khayelitsha Township in Cape Town and met with a group of orphans from a nearby orphanage, and I interviewed him, had 2 questions to ask him. And Lucas Radebe as well is a hero in South Africa. So those kind of appearances, again, it just really reinforces the fact that, you know, the kind of work we're doing has this backing. It's supported by worldwide figures who are recognised anywhere. And it took quite a while to drag Beckham out of the pitch, actually, because all of the girls were inviting him round for tea, and the mothers at the gates asking for his autograph.
It was anyway, wouldn't it? Because I mean, there's such a huge connection, isn't there, between the English Premier League and African football?
Definitely,
They're all watching it, even in these sort of townships, as you talk about. A bit of controversy at the moment about the way in which the World Cup is awarded to nations. It's very topical, isn't it? But I mean, how important was the World Cup in South Africa for those children?
I think it was massively important, really. I mean, it's a question about what legacy has been left behind, and that's quite another topic. But I think having the World Cup in Africa for the first time and having it been so successful, the stadiums were built, there was no violence or trouble, and the fact that the whole world was looking at South Africa really, again, gave all of the kids in the townships massive excitement, and people were on the TV screens watching or going to the fan parks, etc. So I think it's fantastic that it happened there, and I think it's set the standard now for Rio and beyond, you know, for other countries who are hosting it to live up to that South African experience.
Briefly, in the last minute that remains to us, what's your plan next for Coaching for Hope?
Well, we've started a programme in India, again working with kids in very poor areas, and that's quite exciting because that's kind of a new departure. And I think really we're looking now to do more work on the Women and Girls programme, take that to other countries, possibly Brazil actually, where we're working again in favelas with very similar problems of gender violence and inequality and poverty and the kind of challenges that presents to girls living in Brazil. So it's kind of the world is our oyster, hopefully.
Just okay. Well, very good luck with that, Jane Carter,
Thank
Coaching
you.
for Hope. Thanks very much indeed
Thanks
for joining us on Arise News.